Internal Revenue Service IRS tax news. IRS provides final regulations on income tax withholding on certain periodic retirement and annuity payments. IR 2020-223, September 28, 2020, Washington. The U.S. Department of Treasury and Internal Revenue Service today issued final regulations. There's a link to those final regulations here, updating the federal income tax withholding rules for certain periodic retirement annuity payments made after December 31st, 2020. Prior to the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, the TCJA, if no withholding certificate was in effect for a taxpayer's periodic payments, the amount to be withheld from the payments was determined by treating the taxpayer as a married individual claiming 3 withholding exemption. The TCJA amended this rule to provide that the rate of withholding on periodic payments when no withholding certificate is in effect, the default rate of withholding, would instead be determined under the rules prescribed by the Secretary of the Treasury. So they got, the withholdings that they're going to be picking out if they don't have the information for the withholdings, how much of the withholdings will then be taken out. The final regulations issued today provides guidance on the 2021 and future calendar years. This guidance specifies that the Treasury Department and the IRS will provide rules and procedures for determining the default rate of withholding on periodic payments in applicable forms, instructions, publications, and other guidance. In July 2020, the IRS released a draft of designated 2021 Form W-4P and instructions intended to align with the redesigned Form W-4 Employees Withholding Certificate. There's a link to that here. The draft 2021 Form W-4P also proposed a new default rate of withholding on periodic payments that began after December 31st, 2020. Based on comments received on the draft Form W-4P regarding the time required by payers to implement the new form and new default rate of withholding, the IRS will postpone issuance of the redesigned form. Instead, the 2021 Form W-4P will be similar to the 2020 Form W-4P. The IRS also intends to provide in the instructions in the 2021 Form W-4P a related publications that the default rate of withholding on periodic payments will continue to be determined by treating the taxpayer as a married individual claiming 3 withholding allowances. So note, if they're a married individual with 3 allowances, that's a little bit less of a withholding than you might otherwise get, right? If they were single with no allowances, then you'd think they would withhold more than. So they're kind of erring at this point in time in, if they don't have the information, the default in withholding probably less than they otherwise could have if they made another assumption, such as if they don't have any other information, single with no exemptions. So back to the text. The Treasury and IRS will continue working closely with the tax community on the redesign of the Form W-4P with the intention of making the withholding system more accurate and transparent for taxpayers. So I think this might be a good change as we go forward with this, because note that as we go through our careers, typically we might be working at a W-2 income, in other words, getting a W-2, and we're required to fill out a W-4 and fill out our withholdings, and then we have the withholdings taken from the check through the entire time period. And in the past, there might be more situations where we only had basically, possibly a 1-income household or something like that, which actually is a lot easier to calculate for taxes. And then when you get into the retirement type of situation and you talk about getting money out of retirement accounts or annuities and whatnot, then there's not as much structure to get the money out of those areas. That tax situation can actually be a little bit more confusing in terms of how much do I withhold, what do the withholdings look like. You're not required to have a structure to it, filling out the W-4 as stringently as if you were employed. So, and that can be confusing. So it might be useful to have something that's a little bit more straightforward in terms of the withholding process for these types of areas. So for more information about this and other TCJA provisions, visit irs.gov/tax reform. There's a link to that here. There'll be a link to this in the description.